Baisai, let's do it. Halachas of blood. Halachas of blood. What are you talking about? Yeah, it's actually, Siman Shulchan Aruch. Halachas dam. There's halachas of blood. What made me think of the halachas of blood? Not that we blew up all of those people in Iran, although that is really cool, but that is not what made me think of halachas of blood. This week I had a tooth pulled, which was, as you're guessing, lots and lots of fun. So after that tooth was pulled, I was spitting up blood for like 2 days. And it was not so cool, but Baruch Hashem, Gamzul Tova. And that made me thinking about halachas of blood, so that's what we're doing. Let's go for it. Okay, so the Torah says, B'chol dam lo yiselechu. It actually says it a couple of times. You cannot eat blood. Sorry guys, you thought you could eat blood? No, you can't. The Torah says you can't eat blood. Now, we'll see what type of blood we're talking about. The Gemara Malkus says that if you eat dam behema, you get malchus. So it's chayav malchus for eating dam behema. So it seems to be the issur in the Torah when it says that you shall not eat blood, it is referring to dam behema. And the Shulchan Aruch goes with this. As I said, in Yeridea, Siman Samach Vav discusses all the halachas, all these Samachin and Samach Vav, but we're going to mostly be discussing Samach Vav. The issurim related to blood. And by the way, that is why we have a whole large section of Shulchan Aruch discussing the chiyuv of malicha. What is malicha? So if you would ask your great-great-grandparents, they would know exactly what malicha is. But you might not know. Malicha is the process of salting. It used to be, you had your chickens growing in the backyard, and after you brought it to the shochet, the local town shochet, to get it shechted, every lady knew how to go and you salt the chickens. Salting draws blood, so it takes the blood out of the chicken or out of the meat as well. You do it with meat as well, and that's the process of extracting the blood. Why do you need to extract the blood? The reason is b'chol dam lo yiselechu. State in the Torah, you're not allowed to eat the blood of animals, whether it's chicken or whether it's meat, and therefore we have to salt to get rid of it. Nowadays, it's all done commercialized that we get rid of that blood. Now, just we'll give there's a lot of Shulchan Aruch on this, but let's just talk about the basic points, so we're at least not complete Amaratzim on this. That the short version is, you first, after the animal dies, you go and you soak the animal up in water for however long. Then the animal's body is completely covered in salt. And by the way, this is one of the differentiations between a good hechsher and a bad hechsher, is how much salt they use in the malicha process, because salt costs money. So to use more salt costs more money. So, how much salt do you have to use is a question. So you want to hear what type of salt you use for malicha? Use something called kosher salt. Oh, that's why it's called kosher salt. Oh, because you use it to kasher the animal. So they use this thick salt, kosher salt, and they kasher the animal. That's malicha. And the third part of the process is, then they wash it off. They have to wash the salt, which absorbed and drew all the blood out onto the salt. They wash it off 3 times. They rinse it off 3 times. And now we have milk that's good, because we have milk that's good. We have meat that's good, because we got rid of the bad blood. However, fish blood or grasshopper blood, that's all good. You don't have to worry. Enjoy. Fresh. Geschmack. Eat that fish blood. No problem. I'll get you a straw. It's the issur does not apply to fish blood. It's all good. However, Shulchan Aruch says that if you take that fish blood and you go and you put it into a cup, then it's a problem. Because, you have a cup of blood. Nobody's going to know whether it's fish blood or animal blood. So, alt maris ayin, therefore, nobody's going to know what you're drinking. Therefore, you're not allowed to have a cup of fish blood. But guys, you ready for a big heter? I'm going to give a big heter today. You guys, if anybody asked, did he say any just chumras? Did he say a terim? You tell him he said a terim today, because there's a halacha brought on Shulchan Aruch. If you take some of the scales of the fish and you put it into your cup of fish blood, you could drink the fish blood. It's a simon. So guys, don't worry. You want to have a cup of fish blood, just flip a couple of scales in there, geschmack, and you can enjoy your cup of fish blood. It's kind of very similar if you know the sugya of almond milk. You're allowed to have almond milk right after meat if you have flipped some almonds on the side to be meramis that it's almond milk, not regular milk. How that applies nowadays, good question. Not for now. Okay, so that's the big heter of scales in your cup of fish blood. Now, besides the Torah saying, obviously we can't have animal blood because the Torah said, but what's the reason for it? What's the real issue with having animal blood? So the Rambam and the Ramban both give explanations. The Rambam says apparently the people that used to do all these types of kishuf, they used to do it with animal blood and drink animal blood and etc. That's what the Goyim used to do, and therefore the Torah wanted to separate us from the Goyim, and therefore said no blood for you. Zok the Ramban. The Ramban has something which is maybe a little bit better to my ear. Damu nefesh. Apparently the nefesh, the soul, whatever exactly, I don't know I'll let you figure out what's neshama, what's nefesh, etc., what's ruach, whatever it is that is nefesh. Hadamu nefesh. It seems that there's an element of this nefesh in the blood, and therefore, if you go, you are what you eat. And therefore, if you go and eat animal blood, you're going to be imbibing the nefesh of a behemoth. And assuming that you're better than a behemoth, which hopefully is the case, who wants to imbibe the nefesh of a behemoth? And therefore, we stay away from it. You tell the behemoth, you can keep your nefesh to yourself. I'll stick with my human nefesh.
What does the Rambam do with the Lashon HaPasuk? The Pasuk says that Damu HaNefesh.
Listen, the Damu HaNefesh, the simple pshat of a Damu HaNefesh is that if somebody, that a revius of dam is mitama, just like a nefesh is mitama, it's in Hilchos Tumah that a revius of dam is mitama. That's the pashup pshat of what the Damu HaNefesh is. But these are all Ramazim and Pshetlach. Yeah? Yeah, but the Ram says that they each give this as a tam, as they often do. Once again, when the Rishonim give a tam, it doesn't mean this is the definitive tam to the exclusion of any other tam. It's giving a little taste. Tam, by the way, is, many translate the tam doesn't really mean a reason for the mitzvah, but it means a taste of the mitzvah. The word tam has a double connotation. So it's kind of like a reason which is a flavor. It's not giving over a complete nothing to discuss. This is the reason. Okay, great. Now that we discussed the blood of animals, we discussed the blood of fish, the blood of grasshoppers, delicious. What about the blood of a person? Is that an issue? So it's very surprising to learn that apparently human blood is not included in the issur. There is no issur apparently of eating human blood. Right. So therefore, even the Rabbanan at first, let's just explain. So trivia question, could you have a from vampire? So apparently, yes, you could have a from vampire in theory, because blood is seemingly okay. There might be one or two other issues with a from vampire, but we'll discuss that never. Okay. Now, but in this discussion, it's not included in the issur. The pasuk is not referring to it. Now, therefore, let's say somebody's gums are bleeding or they got a tooth pulled and they want to swallow that blood that's in their mouth, they halachically are allowed to swallow that blood. There is no issur to swallow that blood because there's no such issur on human blood. However, as the Shulchan Aruch states, when that blood goes out of the body, let's say somebody's bites into some bread, and there's blood now on the bread. or somebody bites an apple, right? They used to say you bite an apple when you have a loose tooth, right? And then so you bite your apple, or you bite the bread, and you get blood on the bread or blood on the apple. Now you cannot eat that blood. That blood needs to be scratched off. Why? What's the shot? I thought blood's fine. Once again, we're back at the marasayin. When you look at the blood on the bread, you don't know, the onlooker doesn't know whether the blood came from your mouth or that blood came from elsewhere, and therefore it is going to be issur. Now, I could have heard the argument that the fact that there's a bite mark next to that part of bread, or that would be a siman similar to our fish scales. I thought that would be a siman, but apparently, I guess that siman isn't so mukrak. Maybe an animal took a bite out of that, and the animal had gingivitis. Gingivitis? What is it called? Gingivitis?
That's right.
Yeah. And the animal didn't brush his teeth enough, and the animal had bloody gums, and he didn't get a mustard schmooze from a dentist ever. And maybe that's why there's blood on the apple. So therefore, but an animal would never put scales into a fish cup, I guess. So I don't know. I guess so. Okay. So l'maisa, if there's blood on the bread, and then you have to get rid of it. Now the question is, why is it in the mouth? You're okay. There's no marasayin. Generally, we have a klal when it comes to marasayin. If you can't do it in public, you can't even do it b'chedrei chadarim. That's how how it usually works. I know there are exceptions, but usually the way that it works is marasayin is going to apply no matter what. So if that's true, that marasayin, and we have a thing, you can't have human blood because it's like animal blood, so you shouldn't be allowed to have human blood even when it's in your gums. Why are you allowed to have the human blood then? So there's two approaches. One approach, it's almost the same thing. Rashi says, in your mouth, nobody can see what's going on. And therefore, the marasayin doesn't apply. Now, just to be clear on this, there's a difference between something that is a type of action that people could see, but nobody's around to see. There we say marasayin still applies. But over here, it's not the circumstance that nobody else is around. It's by definition based on the location of the bleeding that nobody sees what's going on. And therefore, that is allowed. The way that Tosfos explains is when you have bleeding gums, everybody knows that it's human blood. There's no marasayin on the gums bleed. When your gums are bleeding, there's no marasayin. I'd say maybe that was cow blood. Your gums are bleeding. Now, one could debate, maybe it's not always so pashut, but okay. So let me ask you a question. What about a bleeding finger, right? Could somebody take their bleeding finger and stick it in their mouth and suck their bleeding finger and eat and consume that blood? Would that, or they have blood in their finger, would that be allowed to put that in their finger and suck it? So one could argue that is machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. So according to Rashi, who says nobody could see what's going on, so when you're sucking the blood that's in your finger, when your finger's in your mouth and you're sucking, nobody could see what is going on at that point. There is a counter svara. This isn't a mukhrach svara. But I think it's the pashtus, but yes, there's room to debate. Nobody could see what's going on when you're sucking your finger. However, when there's blood on your finger, it's not clear as day where that blood's from. Maybe you have blood in your finger that you got from the cat. You just stuck your finger, who you just touched the bleeding cat. Why you touched the bleeding cat? I don't know why anybody touches any cat. But maybe you got blood on your finger from there, and that would be a problem. So the Ma'aseh the Kaf HaChaim says you could be mekel. The Minchas Yitzchak says you should be machmer not to suck your bleeding finger. Okay, here's an interesting one that I thought was a very interesting shayla. I tried to look up. I thought there would be more people that would discuss it. I didn't find much. Can you take, let's say somebody brushes their teeth, and don't tell the dentist, but sometimes you don't brush as much as you should, and there's some blood on the toothbrush. Can you go take that toothbrush with the blood on it and stick it back into your mouth to brush more? Because we just said, remember when the blood was pirish onto the bread, you're not allowed to eat that bread. Now that blood was pirish onto the toothbrush,
Wash it off.
so definitely it's good to wash it off. I'm asking, do you have to wash it off? Or could you just continue brushing. So, I saw brought down from Rav Padwa that he says that's like the bread, and you have to wash it off. I thought it was a chiddush. I'll tell you why I thought it was a chiddush in a second. I tried to find out if anybody else says this besides the Rav Padwa that I saw brought down. I asked ChatGPT because I couldn't find it anywhere. And ChatGPT claimed that Rav Padwa says it, so they got that right. And also claimed that Rebelsky says the same thing, that you can't put that toothbrush, or floss, by the way. Floss is very nicky. Sure that happens. You floss, you get a little blood on it, so you have to rinse it off before putting it back into your mouth, according to this. So they said, so ChatGPT said that Rav Padwa and Rebelsky said it. I couldn't find the Rebelsky, so I don't know if it's MS. ChatGPT does lie. So I don't know if the Rebelsky part's MS, but Rav Padwa says it, and I didn't find anybody that was Makel. I thought more people would discuss this because it's a pretty common shayla, but I didn't find it. L'maisa, why I thought it was mutter. Why do I think it's mutter? Because there's no maris ayin that you're eating the blood. When I brush my teeth, I spit out. I don't swallow that, right? Especially if there's like blood stuff going on over there. I'm definitely not swallowing that, even with like really good flavored toothpaste. I'm still spitting it out. You know what I'm saying? So I don't see why it should be marasayin if you're going to spit it out. Unless you say it's a marasayin because, some stuff end up getting swallowed. It sounds like it's a little much for me. Because I wouldn't say marasayin that somebody's eating it. They're spitting it out. That's why I would have thought to be mater. But I didn't find any big names to back me up on this. But in Svara, I think it should be mater. Correct. Well, the obvious...
Less obvious than the bread.
What's more obvious where it came from, the toothbrush or the bread?
Toothbrush.
Toothbrush is more obvious.
Yeah, bread, someone in that case puts blood in his bread. But over here, it's obvious.
I agree, it is pretty obvious. It's a pretty good hecker. It's like the fish scales in the cup of fish. It's a toothbrush. Tooth in the name of toothbrush, right? I would have thought it was mutter, but what could I do? I found big names that answered. I didn't, or maybe a big name, or maybe suffix big names. I didn't find the mater. If you would have asked me with no names, I would have been mater. But I don't know what to say at this point. Okay, fine. Now let's get into blood spots and eggs. So in the classical, let's bring ourselves back to the Haim. Yeah. So back in the shtetl when we had chickens in the backyard. Or Rosie, you have chickens nowadays? I could see you have chickens in your backyard nowadays.
But it's become very trendy.
It's trendy, right? A little nachlodi, a little, yeah?
Oh, Tom's River.
Tom's River too, yeah? Okay, fine. So, but for us, middle of the ridge, we're not with the new times, and we're also not with the old times. And therefore, we don't have chickens in our backyard. Let's talk about for a second the people with chickens in their backyard first. Let's deal with that. So, if they have a blood spot in their chicken, so there's a possibility that is an egg that was fertilized, right? And if that egg was fertilized, because they have chickens around, they have hens around, they have a lot going on over there, right? So it's possible that chicken is fertilized, and it's on the way to being a little baby chickala, right? And if that's on the way to being a little baby chicken, and you crack that egg, and there's a little blood in there, it could be that's the beginning of the formation of an embryo, of a new chicken, and an embryo of a new chicken is issur midaraisa to eat. Why? Because it wasn't shechted, and therefore it is a din of nevela, this embryo, because it's like an animal already. It's like an animal already, and it's not like ben pekoa that's in the mother's stomach, because it's not in the mother's stomach. So therefore, it's in nevela, there's no shechita, and memela, it's issur to eat because it's issur midaraisa to eat this egg with a blood spot from a potentially fertilized chicken. And that's actually the Gemara pretty much that says this in Chulin Samach Daled.
I don't know if it's shy, but that would be the difference if you shechted a chicken and you found eggs inside and with the blood spots.
Yeah.
Because that would be closer to the van.
So it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. I'll just pose it over here because it's interesting. The question was if you shecht a a chicken and the chicken has a egg inside of it at the time of shechita, and that the egg inside has a blood spot. So I don't know them. We'll ask the veterinarians whether this is something that goes down. But assuming that there is such a metzias like this, yeah. So could we matter that egg with the heter of ben bekoah? Don't know, but it is interesting. Okay, now let's go further. So this what part's usur? Once again, we're in the fertilized egg. This fertilized egg or suffix fertilized egg, what is usur? So which part? So if you, Lefi Shulchan Aruch and the Sfardim are going to say like this. If the blood spot is found in the yellow section, then the whole egg is gone. If the blood spot is found in the white section, then you just have to throw out the blood spot and the rest of the egg is good. If it's found on the kesher, which is that's the part that's like a little bit extra thick gooey, if you know what I'm talking about, a little small bit, it's complicated. It's the whole what to do, whatever.
Is that the membrane?
The membrane, yes. So that's whatever. It's complicated, and we'll see it's not Senegay nowadays, anyways. So I didn't get too involved. Seems to be a little machlokes what you do. Is it being dragged to the yellow? Is it being dragged to the white? So whatever. It's complicated. Okay. Now the Ramah says that the minhag, that in general as Ashkenazim we just throw out the whole egg, unless you have a minhag specifically otherwise that you know what you're doing, you know what's what. The Ashkenazim generally throw out the whole egg on these fertilized eggs when you find a blood spot. Okay, that was the fertilized eggs. Now, what about an egg where there was no hen around? It was just chickens, and therefore we know by definition that these eggs are not fertilized. Nowadays, the way in the process of commercially made chickens, they kill all the male hens, pretty much, mostly, or they send them away. They don't want them anywhere near these chickens. Well, usually they, huh? Yeah, we eat each. It depends on the location and the business plan of each egg-making chicken place, whatever, where they send off the male ones to be eaten, or whether they just kill them, depending on the business model of each one. Now, further, so what do we? So these chickens, we know they're not fertilized. So what's the deal with their blood spots? Now you may be asking yourself, what is that blood spot? Like, why do they have a blood spot? If they're not turning into an embryo, then where's the blood? So apparently, the Metzias goes like this. Apparently, when a small blood vessel of the chicken that laid the egg, a small blood vessel gets ruptured when laying the egg, so it gets a little blood into the egg. So it's a little blood from a small blood vessel of the mother. That's apparently what it is. Okay. So what's with that? So that isn't a nevela. That there's no nevela there. Right? So that original eggs that we were discussing issue, the blood spot, is not, there may be a different issue here that we're going to discuss, but it's not that issue. So what is the issue here? So the issue is, therefore, it's dam behema, l'chayra, because it's a little blood of the mother, and that's what l'chayra the issue is. Now, that's not l'kuliyama what I just said, because the shach says you're actually allowed to eat the blood spot of these type of eggs, because he holds there's no real issur in these blood spots. They're not considered blood spots. However, roiv achreinim say that you're not allowed to eat these blood spots, and that's certainly the minhag that you cannot eat these blood spots. Now, what do you have to throw out exactly? So is it the same thing as we discussed, that Ashkenazim throw out the whole thing, and the Sephardim, it depends where it is? How do we judge these blood spots? So, according to the Minchas Yitzchak, according to Rav Scheinberg, Rav Avadia, the Demetzita Rav, they all say that you just have to throw out the blood, and the rest you're fine. So you don't have to waste the whole egg. Because
any battery eggs.
Any battery eggs, which is any nowadays eggs, according to all these poskim, any nowadays eggs. So you just throw out the little blood spot, and the rest you're good. Because what's the issue already, right? The issue is eating maybe a little blood from the mother chicken, and you get rid of the blood. There's no nevela here. There's nothing turning into a future chicken, and mabaya, it's all fine, no problem. Just throw away the blood, and everything else is fine. I know it's not necessarily how everybody always grew up. Now, Moshe Feinstein says that he has two reasons for this that he brings down. He says, first of all, Lamaisa eggs are cheap. Secondly, he wrote this in 1957. Secondly, in the farm, sometimes the eggs can get mixed up between the eggs of the battery eggs, as they call it, the ones that have no hens around, or the ones that are potentially fertilized. So since, you never know, they can get mixed up. So based on these reasonings, you should throw out the whole egg, even with nowadays eggs. That's what Moshe writes in 1957. Now, I think the pashtus is, I actually reached out to my local egg guy to try to find out some mitzias, but we was busy, we didn't connect today to verify the mitzias. I'm sure in the classical tenuva commercial eggs, there's no such thing as some other fertilized eggs getting mixed in. First of all, they keep everything in code, seder, separate, no shaykhs. Secondly, there's a process that they do called candling. Thank you. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Where they go and they look through the egg with a light, and that shows to make sure there's nothing going on inside the egg.
Only here in America, in South Africa.
In South Africa, they don't do it.
They don't do it, and that's why we found much more blood spots over there, because they don't candle the eggs.
Very interesting. So that would just repeat what we just heard. In America and Eretz Yisrael, they do this candling, and therefore that's why there's so few blood spots nowadays, because anything that they could see that there's a blood spot through the egg, and then they get rid of that egg.
Yeah.
But apparently in South Africa they don't do it, and they have much more blood spots like the olden days. Very interesting. Okay, so Lamaisa, there's no chance in the tenuva eggs. The question that I asked the egg guy, which I was trying to get clarity, is what's the story when you get from these small farms these organic eggs or free range eggs? I have a feeling those farms, which are a little bit less official, those organic farms and free range farms and whatever, I have a feeling that you might be able to. I'm not saying you're normally going to get a fertilized egg. I'm sure you're normally not going to get a fertilized egg. But I think over there, you could say that the Ramosha would still apply. Maybe. But I don't know the Metzias. I want to ask the egg guy.
So the definition of an organic egg is that it could be fertilized, and those are mamish d'oraisa. I mean, if it's like a...
So Rosie is claiming that the Metzias apparently on the what they call organic egg is the type of egg that can be fertilized. So therefore, that Ramosha will, maybe even not the Ramosha, maybe more than the Ramosha, that's already the Shulchan Aruch applies. So it seems, if that's correct, then the organic eggs, the old Shulchan Aruch applies. Sfardim have to check where the blood is. Ashkenazim will throw out the whole egg on those organic eggs. So these organic freestyle eggs, much more is going to be the case of throwing out the whole egg, whereas our classical tenuva, classical whatever type of egg, so L'maisa, according to Roiv of those poskim, you'll just have to get rid of the blood spot. According to Moshe, we'll still throw out the whole egg. Menashe Klein says that you also throw out the whole egg. Why? It's hard to start differentiating between these eggs and those eggs. And if you tell people the halacha, you just throw out the blood, and they'll end up just throwing out the blood on all eggs. Now that we just heard that organic eggs apparently are the original eggs that are potentially really fertilized, so now I really appreciate the Rav Menashe Klein much more than I did when I was writing these notes, because when I was writing these notes, were you going to get confused? When are you going to get confused? Who has fertilized eggs? When are you getting confused? But now, if it's now from what I'm hearing now, it sounds like there really is what to get confused, and the Nash Klein actually speaks louder to me. But Lamaisa, I'm still going to say that Roy Poskim are saying you could just throw out the little blood, and that's it. Another thing that's for sure is when the eggs get mixed in. I'm not sure if I'm going to say this by organic eggs that I have to think about, but by regular eggs. If the eggs get mixed in to a something, there's a little blood spot, but it already got mixed in somewhere and it's not nicker anymore. You can't find that little blood. It's batal. It's gone. It's done. You don't have to worry about it. It doesn't take much to be mevatel a little blood spot. Another thing in Eretz Yisrael, which nobody could quite understand why they still stamp the eggs with red ink. Most of the time that people think they find blood spots in Eretz Yisrael, it's the red ink that they stamp it. They put the dates in Eretz Yisrael on the eggs, among some other things. Sometimes they stamp on there too. But so they, for some strange reason, find the need to use red ink. And when people crack, so you often get a little red ink into the egg, and people think they have blood spots. So if somebody could ask their local Chavrei Knesset or whatever it is to get them to start, doing green or something, that would be much appreciated. Okay, so fine, that's that. Now, as we pointed out, that most eggs are, the eggs nowadays, first of all, are not going to be the race level, they're going to be the Rabbanan level on the standard eggs. They're abundant at most, right? Secondly, we're going to discuss in a minute the chiyuv of checking in general, but before we do that, you realize that we don't check hard-boiled eggs. Hard-boiled eggs, because by definition you're not checking it. So, the shach brings down, there's a way of, some people used to be machmir to make a little hole, drain it out, check it, stick it back in, plug the hole. I don't know how it's possible. I was thinking the same thing. Where we say, the shach says you don't have to do it like them. They're being over machmir. I'm not sure exactly how they pulled it off, but whatever. So, maybe it wasn't the shach. It was definitely somebody. It might have been... It's one of the Neisikalim. I'm going to take it back. It might not be the shach, but one of the Neisikalim brings it down. But the Mesa, generally normal, we do not check hard-boiled eggs. Why? Because al pi roiv, there's no blood spots. When it's efshel levrurei, you could check it, so check it. But when it's not efshel levrurei, there's no way of checking a hard-boiled egg, you don't have to check it. Now, here's a question. Do you need to check eggs at all? What do you mean? Well, there's a general concept in the Torah that you're allowed to follow roiv. However, when there's something that they call, and we know for sure more than 50% of eggs don't have blood spots, right? Now, when you have a significant percentage where a significant minority where something might go wrong, we have a chiyuv midrabanan to check. So we call it the concept miyat hamatzai. Whenever there is a miyat hamatzai, a significant minority, we have a chiyuv derabanan to check. But what type of minority do you need? So it's hard to give a number. Some poskim give a number, maybe 10%. Something like that, or something that has to be where it's not weird to find a blood spot. It's something that there's going to be a blood spot. It's not going to be, wow, crazy, I found the blood. I think nowadays to find the real blood spot that's not just the ink from the tenuva thing is quite rare. I think if you find the Atzi, somebody will be like, hey, check this out. Look at this. I have a blood spot. If somebody's going to say, hey, check this out. Look at this. I have a blood spot. That means it's not normal. So therefore, it's not a miyat hamatzai. Whether it's in percentages, I looked it up. It's apparently a little bit less than 1%. So whether it's on a percentage level or it's an expectation level, it's weird. So based on that those column, you should not have to check eggs nowadays. And secondly, from the fact that we're only dealing with it's not really I guess it could be the deraisa if it's the blood eggs. But we say checking these type of eggs are only derabanan, that's for sure. So it's for sure maximum derabanan checking these eggs, and kulai v'ulai that it even gets to derabanan. So do you have to check in eggs nowadays? So the general mahalach of the poskim is when we have an established minhag in Klal Yisrael that we check eggs, then we continue to check eggs. However, one could be a little bit uncomfortable with this because they used to check eggs because they were dealing with fertilized eggs with high percentages. Now we're dealing with non-fertilized eggs, battery eggs, with low percentages. So there's a good svar argument to be mechalik. But the mice of the poskim seem to go with this idea, it's the minute to check. But when it's hard, it's at night on the camping trip and you can't really check, you don't have to check. Or some of the hechsherim allow in commercial cases. You have to crack 300 eggs. It's hard to check 300 eggs. So some of the kashrus agencies don't make people check. Or for institutions, some of the institutions they're cracking tremendous amount of eggs, don't check because there's a good argument to be made that you don't need to check. I actually once heard of a bakery that the guy used to go and check the night before. He would crack the 200 eggs, check it the night before, and let's face it, at 4 o'clock in the morning, the Hamish guy is not going to be in the bakery. It's only going to be Juan, who the Spanish guy, or here the Arab guy, or whatever, who's going to be taking care of everything. So he did it the night before. He cracked the 200 eggs so he could check because he didn't trust the guy to check. That story is a disaster. He's leaving eggs overnight, which is a real problem, to maybe not have this little bit of blood that's going to be batal anyways, that sarchin, if you have to check, it was a bad cheshbon. No, I'm not talking about liquid eggs.
I don't know how they.
That is how they make liquid eggs. By the way, when you get liquid eggs, that for sure wasn't checked, as a side point.
No, is that how they? Is it real eggs?
Yes, it's real eggs, but they add some stuff. And there's a heter of Moshe that when it's done on a commercial level, it's not a problem of being left overnight. And they add a little salt or whatever it's not eggs, it's eggs with salt, which is a very questionable heter. But Lamaisa, there are heterim for that, even though it's not completely simple, but there are heterim. Now, back to here. So in general, yes, we check, but it's not the most important chumrah of the world. Next point is that I grew up, you could only boil 3 eggs at a time, a minimum of 3 eggs. What's the reason? Because if you do 1 egg and it has a blood spot, it's gonna make the whole thing treif, right? The whole frying pan treif, or the whole pot treif. Well, frying pan's less of the issue because you probably checked it, but it's gonna make the whole pot treif for the hard-boiled egg. Now, if you think about it, first of all, you don't have to be choshesh nowadays. Second of all, even if there's a drop of blood in your egg, it's usually batal b'shishim, the amount that's in there. Because once again, in the olden days, the fertilized egg, the entire egg's a problem. But nowadays, it's just a little spot. If it's just a little spot, you're still going to generally be fine. And especially if you're going to count the water in there, then for sure it's going to be batal b'shishim. So really, you should not need to cook 3 eggs at a time. So Lamaisa, I saw Rav Heinemann and Rav Belsky say, nowadays you don't have to cook 3 eggs, you cook 1 egg, not a problem. However, there are others that say when we have a minhag, so we have a minhag and we follow the minhag because that is the minhag. Now, there's different mahalchim in these types of things. Okay, one more point on the sugya of dam that I'm just going to end with. So it's brought down Shulchan Aruch Reish Mem that somebody who's mekis dam shouldn't have tashmish. So something that what is mekis dam? What's included in that? So giving blood, for those that give blood. So Ramosha discusses the sheila of, are you allowed to give blood to? He's not talking about giving blood to Jews for Pekuach Nefesh, that you could for sure do. Somebody wants to give blood, because they used to, at that point, they were paying money for whoever would donate blood. So you get paid, you'll give the blood to the goyim, and you get paid for it. Like when I came to yeshiva, they used to have a pint for a pint. You give a pint of blood, and you get a pint of Ben and Jerry's. And that was I don't know whatever happened to that pint for pint. But, so they used to get paid for giving blood. So is there issur chavala? He said there's no issur chavala, you're maching parnusa, there's no issur chavala. And he said, number one, Svar 1 is you're making money. Svar 2, we used to see that all over the Gemara they talk about being make his dam here, make his dam there. It can't be so bad to give blood, because giving blood is the same thing as make his dam, is what Ramesha writes. So, and elsewhere, this make his dam seems to be, so if somebody gives blood, they should not have tashmish that day. What about, and by the way, something interesting. That's a sakana. And by the way, something interesting. Ramesha didn't take the chavala easy. There was a shayla asked for somebody to put in an IV on Erev Yom Kippur, put in the IV. So he'll be able to, because he can't, somebody who doesn't have the koach to fast in Yom Kippur, the doctors say he can't fast in Yom Kippur, and you'll give him the IV on Yom Kippur, and he'll do that instead of eating. He says, how could you put the IV in on Erev Yom Kippur? It's chavala. Without a tzarech. Oh, he won't eat on Yom Kippur, he's allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. The doctor says he should eat on Yom Kippur, he's allowed to eat on Yom Kippur, so there's no tzarech for him to put the IV in, and therefore it's a chavala. So Moshe cared about the chavala, but he said for make his dam, that's not chavala, because we see all of her gemaras that they used to do this, make his dam. What about a blood test? Is a blood test considered make his dam? I would have thought no way, right? It's just a little bit of blood. It's not no biggie. And the people that don't give blood think that when you get a blood test, that's a lot of blood. But anybody that gives blood, then you look at a blood test and you say, that's not a lot of blood. A blood test, you fill up a whole bag of blood, So Rosh Hashanah says, no, that's not considered make his dam. Whereas the Tzitz Eliezer says, yeah, even for a blood test, that's considered Akaz's dam, and you shouldn't have tashmish then. Nosebleed, what about that? I don't know the answer. I'll just throw it out there. I don't know. I didn't see anybody discuss it. I was wondering.
If anyone gets a bad cut and loses a lot of blood.
Or gets a bad cut and loses a lot of blood. Is there... I guess if I didn't see anybody discuss it, I shouldn't start being mechadish new whatevers. I don't know. Sarachin, I don't know. It's an interesting thought. I don't know the answer. I would say I'm not coming here to be mechadish new things, but I think it's interesting food for thought. And thank you for listening. And stay away from blood.